What's up, everyone? Janitor Jake here. Now see, there is one thing that really irritates the ever-loving poo-poo out of me, and that is collecting. Now don't get me wrong, collecting can be a pretty fun and enjoyable hobby, and the collection that you started could turn out to be an awesome investment worth tons of scratch one day. You see, I was born in 1985 and grew up with all the awesome goodies of the 1980s and 1990s. And collecting all this stuff from my childhood has been pretty doggone fun. However, there are 4 things that really irritate the snot out of me when it comes to collecting. So let's get things started with number 4, the pricing. Now here's the thing, I don't want to be the old man going around and saying things like, back in my day, Nintendo tapes were only 25 cents. 25 cents a quarter, 2 bits, no, because that's not how it was. Everything had a collector's price to it, depending on rarity and fun value, but the only people who really knew this were retailers and other collectors who were into that specific world. But your average Karen living across the street who's taking a ride on the next door neighbor's baloney pony had no idea what the value of this stuff was. So if they ended up having a garage sale and were selling these kind of items, you could usually get them for pretty dirt cheap. Now you could take a trip to your local retro gaming store and pay more premium prices, but that was really only to guarantee that you would get a more rare and premium game. Otherwise, it was off to the garage sales, thrift stores, and flea markets in hopes of finding that hidden gem for really cheap. However, everyone and their grandmother is now a collector and a reseller, but the main issue is that these dinky winkies still do not know the pricing. Now see, your average video game back in the day was worth about 2 to 3 smacks, with the more rare ones going between like 50 and I don't know, maybe like $1,000. The problem now is that your average game is still only worth $3 to $5. But Johnny Dum Dum down the road does not want to believe that and is now charging bare minimum of $10 for a loose, scratched up $2 game. But at the same time, these knuckleheads are actually doing research and seeing a game like Kid Clown on the NES, which is worth like $700. And they decide to sell it for $900 because they know some other dinklepuss is going to show up and offer $800 for it. So now the dude sold a $700 game overpriced at $800. And the idiot who bought it magically thinks like, oh, I got a good deal. I got a good deal at a garage sale. So now he's going to go and sell it for $1,000. These moronic non-collectors are making up their own prices and causing havoc in the pricing world. And it's getting completely ridiculous because now you can actually go to like a retro game store and get a more fair price. I mean, seriously, I've gone to game stores now and gotten like PS1 games complete and in really good condition for like $2 a piece. But if you turn around and go to a thrift store or a garage sale, you will find those same games there in worse condition, and these moronic ding-dings are selling it now for like 10 to 15 bucks each. Terrible. Just absolutely terrible. Now see, the third thing that really makes me mad is that the older you get, the more nostalgic things become. When I started getting super nostalgic back in like 2008, I was really only nostalgic for things from my childhood, which was basically from the 1980s and 1990s. However, now, in 2023, I've actually become nostalgic for things back in the early to mid-2000s. Now, at the time, obviously I was not nostalgic for things from that time period because I was currently living in it. And now that all that time has gone by, I'm actually nostalgic for it and want to collect things like PS3 and Xbox 360 games, which basically tells me that my collecting will never end. I mean, I remember back in like 2013 when I started playing Skyrim the Legendary Edition. At the time, I was only nostalgic for things from the 1980s and 90s and very, very early 2000s. But now in 2023, I'm super nostalgic for Skyrim and the time period when I was playing it, which is now like 10 years ago. Which is really mind-blowing because it doesn't seem that old to me. But at the same time, I have these feelings of nostalgia for it. I mean, heck, I even have very fond memories of playing Grand Theft Auto 5 back in like 2015. And now I've even become nostalgic for that. It causes a pretty weird mindset in my brain because to me, that stuff still feels pretty doggone new. But at the same time, it feels old because of how long ago the stuff actually was. So, I don't know, I guess really the main issue is that unless I collect for a very specific time period, like the 1980s and 90s, I'm basically going to be collecting for the rest of my life. And now the second thing that really grinds my goose is that the more you collect, the more you want to collect. Once you get bit right in the hind end, see right there? Right in the hind end, I'm making the stallion. Bah, bah, bah. Once you get bit right there, it causes an itch that's kind of a pain to scratch. I started off collecting video games, and as I went to more and more garage sales, flea markets, and thrift stores, I kept seeing other things from my childhood that made me want to collect. For example, I would see Ninja Turtle toys, and since I played with those as a kid, I decided, well, why not? Let's buy it. And then I would find myself not just looking for games, but for toys as well. And then I ended up finding some Alf comics which I had as a kid, and so I found myself adding comics to the list of things to look out for. Which then triggered into just looking for anything from those time periods. And it did not help a single smidge when I would find really weird and obscure things like my Ultimate Warrior sleeping bag, Alf and He-Man puzzles, and board games based off of movies that I grew up with. And what really makes it turd-tastic is that even though I'm going out and about and collecting very specific things, the more I go out and about and do, because I have that stupid itch that needs some scratching, I just start collecting for all this random stuff that I would generally never collect for. For example, I do audio broadcast engineering at a radio station, and I'm part of the Association of Public Radio Engineers and the Society of Broadcast Engineers. And because of that, now I have a collection starting of SBE magazines and my Nautel bag with all the goodies from the NAB show that I attended in Las Vegas, and I have a whole smack ton of these Radio World magazines. And look at this fancy lad who's even in an issue of Radio World magazine. Now, I know, I'm sorry. I actually had to dress nice and wear a t-shirt. But when you're down there in Las Vegas, you gotta dress nice apparently, so I don't know. And now I start going down that rabbit hole of collecting. Basically, even though I had no intent on collecting anything other than the nerdy stuff like games, toys, and other stuff from my childhood, and once I'm introduced to something new, I get that craving to collect for it. Almost like a stupid drug, you know, puff, puff, give, puff, puff, give, you know, how about this? Stick it in your eye, how about stick it in your eye? You got more? More? And now I find myself having this craving to collect things that I never intended on collecting ever in my entire life. And finally, the number one thing that really makes it a stink biscuit, I have no more room left. Just look at this nonsensical hogwash. This is my game collection, and it's like a full 8-foot wall, and I have no more room for any more games to put on there. So I have some games in the American Gaming Geek studio that we are currently playing for our show. And then I have even more games upstairs. And these are all my consoles in the American Gaming Geek studio, but as you can tell, I have no more room. I even have an Xbox One and a PS2 Slim just farting around here, because I have nowhere else to put it. And then back upstairs we got a PS4, Nintendo Switch, PS3, and even a Genesis for practicing games for the American Gaming Geeks, and a PS2 because Keisha and I are playing the heck out of Inuyasha right now. And there are some boxed consoles just sitting up here collecting dust, and one sitting right here as well. And what's even more insane is that these are the consoles that we actually play. I have more just sitting in these storage tubs. Here's a bin just completely chock full of consoles, and a box full of connectors and controllers, and here is an Atari sitting next to another Atari, and a PS3 and original Xbox in a box with a bunch of random Wii stuff. This is getting completely bonkers. And here is my VHS collection, which once again is an entire wall. And on the side is a shelving unit with a bunch of bootlegs that are double stacked. And on top of that is more bootlegs in a box. And since I have no more room, I have another DVD shelf holding more tapes, and even upstairs we have a few more tapes. I have a big shelf full of toys that I have collected over the years, and then over here is all my original toys from when I was a kid. But unfortunately, I can't display them because I have no more room. I have a wall of comic books completely filled up, and a makeshift wall of storage racks with board games and puzzles that are stacked on top of each other. It has gotten so bad that I even have a place to put things that I don't know what to do with. I have these tables full of awesome stuff like my Turbo Man doll and my Star Wars printer paper box. The problem is that it is so full of stuff that I forget about things being there, like these Atari games that I bought a while back. But as of right now, I cannot put them anywhere because I have no more room for anything. And I don't want to use storage tubs because then they won't be displayed. I already have a couple tubs filled with awesome stuff, and you can't even see them because they're buried away. And you want to know what's even crazier? I have more. I have an entire other place that's holding my stuff like a museum. Here is where my original game collection started, and as you can see, it's full. And I have more tapes, more toys, clothes, and posters, and even boxed Wolverine toys hidden in the corner of my closet because I have no place to display them. And then I have boxes upon boxes of DVDs. I got other random toys and just stuff all over the place. It is so bad, I even have 3 storage units completely filled to the brim with stuff. Well, there you go. That's basically how I feel when it comes to collecting. Now, of course, if you're super duper rich and you got yourself a mansion and what have you, now, of course, you can go and take your collection and stick it in there and treat it like a museum. You know, you have all this land and you got your house. You can build a big giant house right next to it, just completely dedicated to all your nerdy stuff that you like to collect. That's fine. However, if you're someone like me and you got just enough money to go and blow on all this stuff from your childhood, especially if you grew up like me and was raised around absolutely anything and everything. But, you know, I guess with that being said, I think I'm going to take off. So whatever, I'm Janitor Jake, and I want you guys to have a wonderful after evening.